This assignment is challenging in several ways. One of the challenges that I face is defining a restorative justice spirituality. How do I go about doing that? I grew up within the tradition of the Black Pentecostal Church, and certainly, in my opinion, there is a stronger sense of spirituality than religion when it comes to how I understand Christianity. But I have never been asked to define it or articulate it, and definitely not from the branch of restorative justice. Theologically, I would start from the understanding that God is a healer, a restorer, a life-giving presence in our lives. Spirituality, however, I believe, pushes beyond theology, implying many perspectives, though still referring to something bigger than ourselves, as well as exploring the meaning of life. Part of my spirituality asserts that we are God's children, which speaks to an undeniable connection and relationship with one another, even if we all don't act like it. This understanding, way of being, and the translating practices that I believe we are called to is conducive to and even explicitly related to restorative justice. In terms of restorative justice, Ched Myers, in his book Ambassadors of Reconciliation, New Testament Reflections on Restorative Justice and Peacemaking, characterizes the aims of restorative justice as reducing or halting the presenting violence in order that two victims and offenders, as well as their communities and other stakeholders, can collectively identify harm, needs, and responsibilities so that three, they can determine how to make things as right as possible, which can include covenants of accountability, restitution, reparation, and ideally reconciliation. As I reflect on these three aims, I can sense a spiritual desire and need for these aims and the healing that it can bring to many people in the Black communities. I have usually considered the awareness-raising components to the Black Lives Matter movement when it comes to the predominantly white community in the U.S. and in the global community. But these need healing too. I can also sense the challenges and antithesis of such a spirituality. As I explore my understanding of restorative justice spirituality, I think that it is uncanny how my mind immediately pushes the Black Lives Matter movement to the back of my mind. It's as if my mindset wants to keep the idea of restorative justice unmarried from the movement, even though in many ways what Black Lives Matter does involves it. Through its awareness-raising efforts, Black Lives Matter calls for accountability by municipal, state, and federal government leaders. It is unfortunate that when injustice is exposed on the side of government officials, the way we interpret the story is that someone has to eventually pay. It is even more unfortunate and frustrating when government officials do not pay for evil that they have done within our current justice system. For example, the governor in Michigan who allowed poison water to poison the Black community and has not done any jail time, let alone been faced with any types of indictments. Even in the rare occasion where we read or hear stories where someone in government did pay, it isn't like that payment results in change. Someone paying doesn't guarantee that the social problem has been repaired or is even in the process of being repaired? Why isn't restorative justice an alternative that may offer more long-lasting solutions married to Black Lives Matter in my mind and others like me? I believe that the antithesis of a restorative justice spirituality is the context of our Western culture and the way that it has shaped how we interpret ourselves and the world, particularly two aspects: how punitive our society is and how individualistic it is. Spirituality is contextual, developed over our lives through our experiences, scriptures, faith traditions, and theology which has been taught to us, for people of faith at least. Culturally, our theology says that God, depicted and seen as a judge, compensates our actions and deeds, and our accompanying cosmology claims that the universe is designed to reward good and punish evil. It's difficult to explore the idea of restorative justice, even when we know that it exists and works. When all our lives we have been taught that good deeds will be rewarded and bad deeds are to be punished. For a long time, for example, there was an indifference toward the homeless due to the belief and interpretation of their circumstance, that they brought their misfortune upon themselves by not being hard workers. It took time to realize through awareness-raising efforts that there were a number of reasons why people were on the streets, including being preyed upon by financial institutions. But even with the efforts of raising awareness, many people hold on to their ideologies and misconceptions, regardless of the evidence that is presented to them. Within the past decade, these Western beliefs have began to crumble. We see people being punished when they haven't committed a crime. For example, Trayvon Martin. And we see other people seemingly rewarded for criminal activity. For example, the people on Wall Street and or financial institutions responsible for hardworking people losing their jobs who have never been punished for their crimes, and in some instances had gotten raises and financial benefits from it. In terms of the mindset of individualism, Western culture works against a restorative justice spirituality. If it wasn't already, community is starting to become a strong developing component of my theology. Unfortunately, I am still affected by the overarching community, and for many, a notion that our relationship with God is merely personal, unaffected by our relationship with others and they with us. We are under the illusion that we live in silos, immune to what is happening with others, and that these others aren't affected by our actions or inactions. This mindset promotes indifference to the suffering of people who are afflicted by today's injustices. And in many ways, I believe that it leaves Black people hardly ever anticipating white people as a whole desiring justice for us. Though I attend a predominantly white community of faith who I believe love me, I struggle with sharing the challenges that I face as a Black man, led by Western culture to believe that my problems are my own, even racial ones. Restorative justice spirituality calls us together to solve problems as a community, and not merely in our own individual lives or even among others that share our specific ethnicities, genders, sexual orientations, ideologies, and beliefs.